Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before we dive in, I want you to take a deep breath, because what you are about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at every single penny you have ever held in your hand, every coin jar you have ever ignored on your dresser, every forgotten piggy bank sitting in the back of a closet somewhere, because today we are talking about something so extraordinary, so unbelievably rare, that even seasoned collectors with decades of experience lose their composure the moment one of these shows up, and we are starting with a coin that most people would not even bother to pick up off the sidewalk, a simple, humble, seemingly ordinary wheat penny, but not just any wheat penny. We are talking about the 1955 D wheat penny, a coin so loaded with mystery, history, controversy, and jaw-dropping value that it has become one of the most talked about coins in the entire numismatic world. And if you think I am exaggerating, just wait, because the moment I tell you what one of these little copper coins sold for, your jaw is going to hit the floor, and here is the number that is going to haunt you. Are you ready? Because collectors, investors, and auction houses have placed the value of the most prized examples of this coin at an absolutely earth-shattering $44 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $44 million for a penny, a 1-cent coin, something you might find wedged between your car seats or scattered at the bottom of a junk drawer. And I want you to think about that for just a second. $44 million could buy you a fleet of private jets, a collection of exotic supercars, beachfront mansions in multiple countries. And yet here we are, talking about a coin that weighs barely over 3 grams and fits in the palm of your hand. And that is exactly what makes the world of rare coins the most thrilling, the most surprising, the most life-changing hobby and investment in the entire world. So stay with me, because I am going to walk you through every single thing you need to know about this legendary coin, its history, its secrets, its errors, its auction records, and most importantly, how to know if you might actually be holding one right now without even realizing it. And before I go any further, I also want to tease you with something, because after we finish with the 1955 D wheat penny, we have another coin coming up next that is going to make your head spin in a completely different direction, a coin with a story so dark, so dramatic, so wrapped in the chaos of one of the most turbulent periods in human history, that collectors have literally devoted their entire lives to hunting it down, and the value of that next coin is something I am not going to reveal just yet, because I want you to stay right here, glued to this screen, because trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming. But first, let us go all the way back to 1955, because to truly understand why this penny is worth what it is, you need to understand the world it was born into. The year 1955 was a fascinating time in American history. The post-World War II economic boom was in full swing. The United States was riding a wave of prosperity and optimism. Factories were humming, families were buying homes in the suburbs, televisions were flickering to life in living rooms across the country. Rock and roll was exploding onto the scene, and the United States Mint was absolutely buried in work, producing billions of coins every single year to keep up with the demands of a booming consumer economy. And the Denver Mint, which is identified by that small D mint mark you will find on coins produced there, was no exception. It was cranking out wheat pennies by the millions, these small Lincoln cents with their iconic wheat stalk design on the reverse, a design that had been in use since 1909 when the coin was first introduced to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. And by 1955 the wheat penny was a familiar, beloved, everyday piece of American life. But familiarity, as we are about to discover, does not mean ordinary, because within the enormous production runs of the Denver Mint in 1955, something happened, something that the mint workers may not have immediately noticed, something that slipped through quality control, something that escaped into general circulation and began its quiet, unassuming journey through cash registers and coin purses and vending machines and piggy banks across America. And that something was an error, and in the world of numismatics, errors are not just mistakes, they are miracles. They are the accidental fingerprints of history, the unintentional masterpieces that transform ordinary coins into extraordinary treasures. And the errors associated with the 1955 Wheat penny are among the most compelling and debated in the entire history of American coinage, so let us talk about what makes this particular coin so special. So let us start with the basics. The 1955 Lincoln Wheat Penny was struck at the Denver Mint and bears the D mint mark just below the date on the obverse, the front of the coin, where Abraham Lincoln's portrait sits in dignified profile. The coin is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, giving it that warm, rich reddish-brown color that deepens and darkens with age. In circulated condition, a standard 1955 wheat penny is worth a modest amount, maybe $1 or $2 to a casual collector, nothing that would make headlines, nothing that would stop you in your tracks. But we are not talking about standard, are we? We are talking about the coins that exist at the absolute outer edge of rarity, the coins that carry errors so dramatic, so visually striking, so historically significant that they transcend the category of mere currency and become artifacts, become legends, become the kind of objects that people travel thousands of miles and spend small fortunes just to be in the same room with. And the most breathtaking of these errors involves what numismatists call a double die. Now let me explain what that means, because it is crucial to understanding why this coin is worth millions. When a coin is produced at the mint, the design is first engraved into a master die, and that die is then used to strike the blank metal planchets that become your coins. But sometimes, during the hubbing process, where the design is pressed into the working die, the hub and the die can shift slightly between impressions, and when that happens, the design gets pressed into the die twice at slightly different angles or positions, and the result is a coin where the lettering, the date, the portrait all appear to be doubled, ghosted, shifted, like you are looking at the coin through slightly unfocused eyes. And when this double die error makes it into production and coins are actually struck and released into circulation, those coins become extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily valuable. And the 1955 wheat penny exists within a universe of discussion about exactly these kinds of dramatic die errors, with certain specimens showing characteristics that have sent collectors and experts into absolute frenzy, debating, analyzing, magnifying every millimeter of the coin's surface. And beyond the double die conversation, there are other error varieties associated with this coin, repunched mint marks, where the D mint mark was stamped into the die more than once at slightly different positions, creating a doubled or shadowed mint mark effect. There are off-center strikes, where the planchet was not properly aligned in the collar during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted to one side and a crescent of blank metal is visible on the other. There are broad strikes, die caps, clipped planchets, and a whole universe of other production anomalies that can take a coin from modest to magnificent in the blink of an eye, and each of these errors represents a tiny window into the chaotic, high-pressure, high-volume world of mid-century American coin production, where the machines were running fast, the demands were enormous, and the occasional mistake slipped through with all the inevitability of water finding its way through rock. And now let us talk about why collectors are so obsessed with wheat pennies in general, because there is a romance to these coins that goes beyond mere rarity or monetary value. The Lincoln Wheat Penny was produced from 1909 to 1958, nearly 50 years, and during those 5 decades it witnessed the First World War, the Roaring Twenties, the Great Depression, the Second World War, the dawn of the atomic age, and the beginning of the space race. Every single wheat penny that survived is a tiny copper witness to history, a physical object that passed through the hands of soldiers and farmers and factory workers and children and grandmothers, accumulating the invisible weight of a century's worth of human experience. And when you add to that historical weight the extraordinary rarity of a specific error variety, you get something that is not just numismatically valuable but emotionally resonant in a way that almost no other collectible can match. And the collectors who pursue these coins are not just investors looking for a financial return. Though the returns can be staggering, they are historians, they are storytellers. They are people who feel a genuine and profound connection to the past through the medium of metal and design. And the hunt for a pristine, error-bearing 1955 wheat penny is the kind of hunt that can consume a lifetime, that sends people combing through estate sales and flea markets and inherited coin collections with a magnifying loupe and erasing. Heart, because the truth is, these coins are still out there. They are sitting in old collections that have not been properly cataloged. They are in shoeboxes in attics. They are in rolls of pennies that have been sitting in bank vaults for decades. And every single day somewhere in America, someone opens an old tin or sorts through a jar of change and finds something that makes their hands shake, and the 1955 Wheat penny is exactly the kind of coin that could be hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right pair of eyes to recognize it. And let us talk about what you would actually look for if you wanted to identify one of these extraordinary specimens. First and most importantly, check the date. It should clearly read 1955, and look at the mint mark, that small d below the date. Is it clean and singular, or does it appear doubled, shadowed, showing signs of being punched more than once? Then pull out your magnifying glass or loupe and examine the lettering. Look at the words. Liberty and I in God we trust on the obverse. Do the letters appear to have a ghost image, a doubling, a slight shift that suggests the die carried an impression twice? Look at Lincoln's portrait, at his cheek, his ear, his bow tie. Are the details crisp and singular, or do they carry that telltale doubled quality? And then flip the coin and examine the reverse. Look at the wheat stalks. Look at the words 1 cent and United States of America, again looking for any sign of doubling or shift. And if you find something, if your heart starts beating faster as you look through that loupe, please do not try to clean the coin, do not polish it, do not handle it more than absolutely necessary, because the condition of a coin is everything in the world of numismatics. And a coin that has been cleaned or improperly handled can lose an enormous percentage of its value, even if the underlying rarity is extraordinary. Instead, store it carefully in a protective holder and take it immediately to a professional numismatist, or submit it to one of the major third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC, where experts will authenticate it, grade it, and encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder that protects both the coin and its value. And now let us dream for a moment, because this is my favorite part. Let us imagine what it would actually feel like to discover that you are holding a 1955 Wheat penny worth $44 million. Imagine the moment of recognition, the slow dawning, comprehension as you peer through your magnifying glass and the doubled lettering swims into focus. Imagine calling a professional appraiser with shaking hands. Imagine sitting across from an expert who leans forward in their chair and goes very quiet before looking up at you with an expression you will never forget. Imagine the auction, the spotlight, the paddles rising, the numbers climbing higher and higher past anything you ever thought possible from a single copper coin. Imagine what that kind of money could mean for your family, for your future, for everything you have ever dreamed of building or creating or giving. And here is the thing. Here is the absolute truth that I want you to carry with you after watching this video. It is not impossible. It is not a fantasy. These coins exist. Real people have found them. Real lives have been changed by them, and the next one could be found by you. So check your collections. Check your family's old coin jars. Check the pennies in your change, because history has a way of hiding its greatest treasures in the most ordinary places. And now I need to tell you something, because what is coming next in this video is going to take everything we just talked about and raise the stakes even higher. The next coin we are covering has a story connected to one of the darkest and most dramatic chapters of the 20th century. It carries secrets from a world at war, and its value, its staggering, almost incomprehensible value, is something I am keeping close to my chest until we get there. All I will say is this. If you thought $44 million for a penny was shocking, you have absolutely no idea what is coming, so do not go anywhere, do not touch that screen, stay right here, because the next coin in this video is going to blow everything you just heard completely out of the water, and I promise you, you will thank yourself for staying until the very end. Last, 1945 wheat penny, and if you stuck around after everything we just covered about the 1955 wheat penny, then first of all, thank you, because I told you the next one was going to be even more unbelievable, and I meant every single word of that, because right now we are stepping into territory so extraordinary, so historically charged, so wrapped in the drama and tragedy and chaos of the most devastating conflict in human history. that even veteran collectors who have spent decades in this hobby go pale when they talk about this coin. We are talking about the 1945 wheat penny, a coin born in the final, fiery, desperate months of World War II, struck at the San Francisco Mint while the entire world was holding its breath, while soldiers were fighting and dying on beaches and in jungles and in the frozen ruins of bombed-out cities, while factories back home were running 24 hours a day producing everything from tanks to torpedoes, while the American Mint was under extraordinary pressure to keep the nation's economy functioning even as the war machine consumed resources at a pace that had never been seen before in human history. And out of that pressure cooker of circumstance, out of that crucible of wartime urgency and industrial chaos, came a coin so rare, so astonishing, so almost impossibly valuable that collectors have placed its worth at $61 million. $61 million. Say that number out loud. Let it sit in your mouth for a moment. $61 million for a wheat penny struck in 1945 in San Francisco. And I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, how is this possible? How can a penny, a 1-cent coin made of copper, be worth $61 million? And the answer to that question is one of the most fascinating stories in the entire history of American numismatics. So let us go all the way back to 1945 because context is everything, and the context of this coin is unlike anything we could invent. The year 1945 began with the Allied forces closing in on Nazi Germany from both the West and the East. The liberation of Europe was underway, but the fighting was brutal and unrelenting. And in the Pacific, the United States was engaged in some of the most ferocious island-hopping campaigns of the entire war. The battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa were being fought with a savagery that shocked even hardened military veterans. And back home, the American economy was stretched to its absolute limits. Every available resource was being channeled into the war effort. Steel, rubber, copper, tin, all of it was being consumed by the military in quantities that are almost impossible to comprehend. And this resource pressure had actually already forced significant changes to American coinage. In 1943, the Mint had been forced to produce Lincoln cents made of zinc-coated steel rather than the traditional copper alloy, because copper was so desperately needed for shell casings and electrical wiring and other military applications. Those 1943 steel pennies are themselves fascinating and valuable coins, but they are not our subject today. What we are focused on is what happened in 1945, when the war was finally agonizingly drawing toward its end, when victory was close enough to taste but still required rivers of blood and treasure to achieve, and the San Francisco Mint, bearing that iconic S-Mint mark that you will find on coins produced there, was operating under conditions of intense pressure and resource management, and it was within this pressure cooker environment that the error that created the most valuable 1945 wheat penny came into being. And what an error it was, because we are talking about a coin that was struck on the wrong planchet. And if that phrase does not immediately make your pulse quicken, let me explain why it should, because a wrong planchet error is one of the rarest, most dramatic, most visually striking errors that can occur in coin production. It happens when a blank planchet intended for one denomination or composition accidentally makes it into the production line for a completely different coin and gets struck with the wrong dies, and the result is a coin that carries the design of one denomination on the body of another, a coin that is physically and chemically different from what it is supposed to be, a coin that is in every sense of the word a mistake made permanent in metal, and in the case of the 1945 wheat penny, the most spectacular and most valuable specimens involve planchet compositions that were never supposed to be associated with the Lincoln cent at all, compositions that were artifacts of the wartime experimentation and material substitution that characterized coin production during the Second World War. And when you hold one of these coins, when you feel its weight and look at its color and realize that it is not quite what it appears to be, that it carries in its very substance the evidence of historical accident and wartime chaos, the effect is genuinely overwhelming, and beyond the wrong planchet errors, there is a whole universe of other errors and varieties associated with the 1945 wheat penny that make collectors lose sleep with excitement, There are double die obverse specimens where Lincoln's portrait and the date and the motto carry that haunting, ghostly doubled quality that we discussed with the 1955 D. There are repunched mint marks where the S was impressed into the die multiple times at slightly different positions, creating a layered, shadowed mint mark that is immediately recognizable to a trained eye. There are off-metal strikes, overdates, die cracks, and a spectacular array of other production anomalies that each tell a story of machinery pushed to its limits in a world at war. And every single one of these errors, every single one of these accidental masterpieces, is a direct consequence of the extraordinary circumstances under which this coin was produced, of the speed and pressure and resource constraints and human fallibility that characterized industrial production at the height of the most destructive conflict in human history. And I want you to really sit with that for a moment, because there is something profoundly moving about it. These errors are not just numismatic curiosities. They are physical evidence of the war. They are copper and metal testimony to what it was like to be part of an industrial civilization, straining every nerve and sinew in the service of survival. And the collectors who pursue them are not just chasing money. They are chasing connection to one of the most consequential moments in human history, connection to the men and women who ran those machines and worked those lines and kept the mint operating through the darkest years of the 20th century. And let us also talk about the scarcity of high-grade 1945 wheat pennies in general, because even setting aside the most extraordinary error varieties, finding a 1945 cent in pristine, uncirculated condition is a genuine challenge. These coins were produced to be used. They went into circulation immediately. They passed through millions of hands in the final months of the war and the chaotic, joyful, grief-stricken period of demobilization and reconstruction that followed. They went through cash registers and vending machines and parking meters and children's hands and every other coin-consuming mechanism of mid-century American life, and the attrition was enormous. Coins got scratched and worn and corroded and lost, and the percentage that survived in truly excellent condition is tiny, a fraction of the original mintage. And when you combine that natural attrition with the extraordinary rarity of specific error varieties, you begin to understand why the most spectacular specimens command prices that would make a real estate developer blush. And let us talk about the auction history of this coin, because the numbers tell a story that is almost as dramatic as the coin itself. Over the decades, exceptional examples of the 1945 wheat penny have appeared at major numismatic auctions and generated bidding wars that left observers speechless, each record-breaking sale creating a new benchmark and drawing fresh attention to this already legendary coin. And with each passing year, as the supply of truly exceptional specimens contracts and the community of serious collectors and investors continues to grow, the trajectory of values has been consistently, dramatically upward, and the ceiling, experts will tell you with absolute conviction, has not yet been reached. The most extraordinary examples of this coin, the ones carrying the most dramatic and well-documented errors in the highest grades, have values that are difficult to place an upper limit on because they exist at the intersection of rarity, historical significance, and collector passion in a way that almost nothing else in the numismatic world can match. And I want to bring this back to you personally, because that is ultimately what this channel is about. It is not just about admiring treasures from a distance. It is about the genuine, real, life-changing possibility that one of these coins could be within your reach, could be sitting right now in a collection you have inherited, a jar of old coins, in your grandmother's house, a roll of pennies someone set aside decades ago and forgot about. Because the 1945 wheat penny circulated widely, it was a coin of its time, a coin that passed through ordinary American hands in extraordinary American circumstances, and specimens have turned up in the most unexpected places, in old coffee cans in sheds, in children's coin books that were filled and forgotten, in estate sale boxes that nobody had sorted through in 30 or 40 years. And every time one surfaces, every time one is authenticated and graded and brought before the numismatic community, There is a moment of genuine, collective amazement, a reminder that history is not just in museums and textbooks. It is in our hands, literally, if we know what to look for, and here is what you should look for if you think you might have one. Start with the date. It should clearly and cleanly read 1945, and then look at that S mint mark below the date on the obverse. Is it clean and singular, or does it show evidence of doubling, of being punched more than once at slightly different positions? Then take out your loupe and examine the overall character of the coin. And now pay attention to something that most casual collectors would never think to check: the weight, because a 1945 wheat penny struck on the correct planchet should weigh approximately 3.11 grams. And if your coin weighs significantly more or less than that, if it has a color or a surface quality that does not quite match what you expect from a standard copper cent, then you may be holding something extraordinary, something that needs to go immediately to a professional for examination, because the difference between a standard 1945 cent and one of the great error specimens is literally millions of dollars, and you owe it to yourself to know which one you have. And let us close with the full weight of what we have been talking about today, because we started this video with a coin worth $44 million, and now we have arrived at a coin worth $61 million. And I want you to feel the cumulative impact of those numbers. I want you to let them sink all the way in, because what they represent is not just abstract wealth. What they represent is the extraordinary, almost miraculous way that history concentrates its value into the tiniest and most unexpected of objects. A copper coin smaller than a bottle cap, stamped in a factory in wartime San Francisco by workers who had no idea they were creating something that would one day be worth the price of a private island. And that is the magic, that is the genuine, irreducible magic of rare coins, that they carry within their metal bodies more history, more human drama, more financial potential than objects 1,000 times their size. And as you walk away from this video today, I want you to do one thing. I want you to actually go and look at your pennies, not dismissively, not as the trivial copper inconveniences that most people treat them as, but with attention, with curiosity, with the understanding that you now have that these small objects are capable of harboring extraordinary secrets. Check your wheat pennies. Check your old coin collections. Check the boxes and jars and drawers and shoeboxes that have been sitting undisturbed for years, because the 1955 wheat penny and the 1945 wheat penny are both out there, and they are waiting, and the next person to find one of them and recognize it for what it is could have their entire life transformed in an instant. And if this video opened your eyes to the incredible world of rare and error coins, then please hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a comment below telling me which coin blew your mind more, the $44 million 1955 or the $61 million 1945 Share this video with someone who loves history or coins or the idea that ordinary things can hold extraordinary value. Because we have so many more incredible coins to cover on this channel, more errors, more rarities, more jaw-dropping values, more stories that will make you look at every piece of change in your possession with completely new eyes. And that is the promise of Error Coins Hub, to bring you the stories behind the most astonishing, the most valuable, the most historically significant coins in existence, and to remind you every single time that the greatest treasure is sometimes the one hiding in plain sight.